In the name of God, our mother, our brother, and our friend. Amen. Please be seated. This is one of those Sundays where I planned to do a conversational sermon. And over the course of the last week, I decided I had something else to say. And I didn't really write it down. I made some notes. Which I don't preach from notes. I'm a manuscript preacher. But I'm really struck by this passage and its timing in the world we exist in, or try to exist in, and how heavy it can be. And I'm struck by this verse 30. Oh, it's not numbered in the bulletin, is it? Verse 30 is, "Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again." And giving to those who beg is to help those who are desperate, to help those who exist out on the margins, those whose lives are defined by desperation, whose daily work is desperation. Not many of us feel that in the way that some of our most vulnerable neighbors do. And then verse 33, "If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? If you're giving just to get back, if you have a friend that you go to dinner with every so often and you take turns paying for each other, and one of you always pays at McDonald's and the other always pays at Ports, are you looking for the tat for the tit? Are you looking for some great equilibrium? Or are you just glad to spend time with one another? Are you just glad to give? Are you glad to participate in making another feel worthy or loved or even human? If you're helping the people that can turn around and pay you back, are you helping the desperate? In verse 36, "Be merciful just as your Father is merciful." There's a Mary Gauthier song called "Mercy Now." She goes through these people, these friends and family and all of these people in the world who need a little mercy now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not 2026, 4 years, 10 years, but now, today, this moment right here. As we're sitting in our warm church and there's people across town without heat. Mercy now. What does mercy look like in a world that is so unmerciful, unrelenting, unyielding, unforgiving, unloving? What does mercy look like? And do we remember that God especially loves those who don't experience that mercy? Who don't experience God's love. No, love. Who don't experience love according to God's values. That they don't see God's love from their neighbor. What does mercy look like to them? I've been very struck this week, the last 10 days really, by the death of Sam Nordquist. Many of you have probably seen it. John wrote an excellent article in the paper. If you haven't, there's papers downstairs to go read it. But Sam was a 24-year-old trans man from Minnesota who came here in September to meet a woman he'd met online, to begin a relationship, to work on building a relationship. And he lived for a while at Patty's Lodge on 5 and 20, which is a house of questionable things. Ill repute, ill repute is what I was looking for. And so lived there with this woman and potentially some others for several months. Kept in contact with his family until January when they couldn't reach him anymore. And they contacted the New York State Police and asked for a missing person report, and that went nowhere. And they asked for DSS to do the same, and that went nowhere. It went nowhere. And then 2 weeks ago, not even, his body was found in a field out on Payne Road. How many miles is that from here? 3 miles, 3 or 4 miles from here? I could walk that far without collapsing, even with my back feeling how it is today. But then we hear of all of the brutality that Sam allegedly, or very likely, endured during this long stay. The abuse, assault, who knows what else? We don't know. It's that old country song, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. So this has been heavy. It's been a heavy week for those of us who struggle for trans and queer, LGBTQ rights, liberation. And I see that this situation is defined by a few things. First, exploitation. That Sam was a black trans man from some far-off place called Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. To this place of lakes, he was brought here and abused. And the second is dehumanization. And this is what I've thought a lot about this week, dehumanization. Because as a society, we look to those who exist on the margins and marginal positions of life as someone less than. We hope to build affordable housing so that people have a place to live, but it has to be on the edge of town where we don't see them. These bathroom bills that we've heard about for far too long, talking about how trans people can't use the bathrooms that match their identity, serve to dehumanize people, to make them less than. There's a whole history of dehumanization of black people. Even before slavery, before the transatlantic slave trade, that black people are 2/3 man, or other racist things you could very easily come up with. For us to look at someone and not see the face of God in them is dehumanization. And third, patterns of abuse. There have been all of these stories that have come out on Facebook and other places about the now 7 people who have been arrested and charged with second-degree murder. All these allegations of the patterns of abuse that they've engaged in. One of the arrested is the woman who brought Sam here. He's her son. It's a cycle. Abuse is cyclical. It always is. Whether it's alcoholism or sexual abuse or what have you. There has to be a point where someone draws the line and says, this ends here. I think we all know that. We've all been touched by abuse in some way or another in our daily life and work, and for some people in church. Let's not forget. So these 3 terrible things of exploitation, dehumanization, and patterns of abuse have intersected at the life of Sam Nordquist. And the police did nothing. And DSS did nothing. And people at one of the vigils this week responded by saying, oh, don't make this political. Don't make this political. As if there's any one single thing in our life that is not already political. Especially as us, a group of largely straight, largely white, largely middle class or above people. Everything about our life is political. I've said that before. In the same way, everything in our life is theological. And there's a great deafness to that people are encountering, that they're saying, this is not political, this is not something to get all torn up about. When we look at the statistics of trans people, does anyone know what the average age is? Has anyone heard that this week? Close. 30 is the average life expectancy for a trans person. 3/4 of trans people that are killed are Black. And what do we do about it? We sit here, we send thoughts and prayers. I've been to 3 events this week, 2 of them vigils, 1 of them rally. The first one on Monday had probably around 600 to 700 people online and in person and out on the street. 600 to 700 people. And Tuesday night, my friend Matt was there. I'd say 200 to 250. And then yesterday in Canandaigua, a group of probably 300 people came out to mourn, to rage, to be in community with the people who are hurting. So you're looking at 1,500 people in a week just in Canandaigua and Geneva. There was a rally in New York City that drew numbers. San Francisco, Chicago, all had rallies in support of yet another yet another, yet another, yet another death of a black trans person. So if we think about who is desperate, who doesn't have the access to the life that we all enjoy, how do we love that person as God has loved us? I think the most stirring thing that I've heard this week is that Sam Nordquist had a tattoo here on his left forearm that read, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that the world might not perish through him." Something we all hear with some regularity. We see that on bumper stickers and signs at NASCAR races. For God so loved the world, all of creation, in all of its complexity. God is there loving, while so many hate. It's not a time for thoughts and prayers. It has not been a time for thoughts and prayers for years. But it is a time for action and change. Amen.